Hey everybody, it's Kathy Cox Bonial. I'm the director of the Skills Region 8 La STEM Center located at Louisiana Tech University in Ruston, Louisiana. And I also have the enormous privilege of directing our Louisiana Girls Collaborative Project. And we are so excited that you've joined us for the third installment of our STEM Her Way webinar series. And we have a great guest tonight. We were actually scheduled to talk to her about 10 days ago, but the weather delayed us. We had a hurricane that came in South Louisiana, and so that might give you a little hint as to where we're going tonight. But I'm going to throw it over to Ashni Shaw. She is the brainchild behind our STEM Her Way initiative. And Ashni, I'm going to let you introduce our guest and get us started.
Okay, thank you so much, Miss Kathy. My name is Ashani Shah, and I'm from Shreveport, Louisiana at Caddo Magnet High School. And I'm super excited for our third Louisiana Girls Collaborative Project STEM Her Way webinar. And I'm super excited to have you guys here today. And we're gonna, over the course of this series, we're hoping to shine a spotlight on some of Louisiana specifically, Louisiana's most inspiring female scientists. And STEM Her Way is dedicated to empowering your young women to explore and thrive in unique STEM fields by connecting them with women who are breaking barriers here in our state. So today, our guest is Miss Danielle Manning. And Miss Danielle is a lead meteorologist at the National Weather Service, New Orleans and Baton Rouge Weather Forecast Office. In her daily job, she is responsible for issuing forecasts and warnings for all of southeastern Louisiana, as well as portions of southern Mississippi. She's the daughter of a chemistry and biology teacher, and so her interest in science was encouraged from an early age, and that interest continued to grow throughout high school. She attended an all-girls high school in New Orleans, where she continued to be exposed to strong women role models engaged in the sciences. And Ms. Danielle hopes that her participation in this board will help foster and show support for programs within the state of Louisiana that will encourage more girls like her to take an interest in and study STEM subjects. And so we're super excited to have you. And so why don't you get us started?
All right. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It's really an honor to be considered one of the inspirational women scientists in the state. So hopefully I can live up to that and do a little bit of inspiring. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have some slides. Oops. Let's see. I don't have permission to share. So while that's being taken care of, like Ashni said, I am one of the lead meteorologists at the New Orleans Baton Rouge Forecast Office for the National Weather Service, and we have 122 offices across the country. So there's 4 offices that cover part of Louisiana. Our office covers the southeast portion. There's an office in Lake Charles that covers the southwest portion. Shreveport covers the northwest portion, and then the Jackson, Mississippi office actually covers part of northeastern Louisiana. Okay, let's see. It looks like the sharing is done. So let me get this set up. Start presenter. Okay. All right. So, okay. Is it sharing? Oh, wait. Okay. All right. Perfect. Sorry about that. Okay. So we're going to talk about from fascination to fascination and hurricanes. It should be fascination to forecasting. I don't know why it didn't change on this version, but fascination to forecasting, my path to becoming a National Weather Service meteorologist. So I'm going to start out with this Confucius quote that says, "Choose a job you love and you will never have to work a day in your life." Everyone has probably heard this quote before, and I know it sounds super cliche, but it really is true. When you love what you do, it does not feel like work. And most days, I really do love my job and don't feel like I'm working to make things happen. So we're going to start off with how I chose my career. And as we go through some of these slides, you're going to notice I'm not really one for a lot of words on slides. I typically just kind of talk about the pictures because if I was going to type everything I wanted to say, there's no point in presenting, right? So hopefully my storytelling will keep you engaged and you will learn some things about how I became a meteorologist and how I stayed engaged in STEM and how you can stay engaged in STEM as well. So, like most meteorologists, I really can't remember a time when the weather didn't interest me. Some of my earliest memories are standing on the back patio of my parents' house with my dad, just watching lightning crawl across the sky during summer thunderstorms. I hadn't really reached the point of trying to figure out why the weather was doing what it did, but I did know I liked watching it. And then I don't remember what storm exactly it was, but I can remember as a little child, my dad boarded up the house for a hurricane sometime in the mid to late 80s. And at the time, I thought it was so cool. Now I recognize that it was, probably not the greatest thing to be going through. Um, but back then, I thought it was so cool because the house kind of turned into this cave, and the whole family kind of had a sleepover in the den so that we were all in one place just in case something bad happened, which again, as a child, I didn't put two and two together, but now I know. So I can remember that. And then Hurricane Andrew happened in 1992. And I remember, again, watching those rain bands move through the area and just being fascinated by it. And then a few years later, 1995 happened, and that was one of the first really active hurricane seasons in a really long time. The 80s were pretty quiet, even the 70s were fairly quiet. So 1995 happened, and it was like, whoa, this is really cool. I was a little older by then, so I was watching the Weather Channel more regularly. So I knew more about what was going on with the weather, not just where I was, but kind of everywhere. And I think that hurricane season really solidified my interest in weather to the point where I thought I might want to be a meteorologist when I grew up. Unfortunately, the only things I really knew about meteorology at the time were the Weather Channel and the local news people. So that's not really something that I wanted to do. Being on TV did not interest me. I did not want to do that. I'm sure I had heard of the National Weather Service and the National Hurricane Center, but I didn't know what they did on a daily basis. So I was facing, a little bit of a conundrum at that point in my life. I was really interested in the weather, but being on TV didn't appeal to me, and that's really the only thing that I knew about for weather careers. So, because of that, in the mid to late 90s, there were several detours on my career path, where what I thought I might be when I grew up. Um, of course, I didn't see Silence in the Lambs when it first came out. I was 8, so definitely too young to watch an R-rated movie. But I did see it when it started coming out on TV, the edited version. And I thought to myself, hey, maybe I'll be an FBI agent. That only lasted a few months, didn't really do it for me. And then the movies Volcano and Dante's Peak came out. And I saw both of those, and they came out pretty close to each other in time. And I thought for a little while that volcanology sounded really cool. It was still kind of Earth, it was still Earth science. So it wasn't weather, but it was still Earth science. And it looked really, really interesting and looked like something I might be able to do. So I was really kind of thinking about volcanology for a little while. That lasted maybe a year or so. But then I saw Twister. And if I'm 100% honest, I hate admitting it, but Twister, it really is what made me finally decide to go into meteorology for real. The movie made me realize that not all meteorologists are on TV. Some of them chase tornadoes, and doesn't that sound fun? And the answer to that is no, it didn't sound fun, because I'm too risk averse for that. But the movie also mentioned the National Weather Service. And so that opened up this whole other line of thinking about all these different meteorology jobs that aren't on TV. And if there's these non-TV jobs, surely there's something I can do with the weather. And so fast forward to the early 2000s, it's junior and senior year of high school, and it's time to start thinking about college. So where am I going to study meteorology? Well, there's a ton of schools in the country that offer meteorology degrees, but most of them didn't really fit what I was looking for. And one of the things that's so important when you're choosing a school is that you have to consider what you want to get out of your educational experience. So I had this list of things that I needed. The two biggest drivers for me personally were affordability and proximity to home and family. So I grew up solidly middle class. My dad worked in accountant and my mom was a teacher. So I didn't want to graduate with huge student loan debt sitting on my shoulders. Affordability was so important to me. And then I was also really nervous about moving away from home and family, as I think a lot of 18-year-olds are, right? You've lived your whole life with your parents, with your siblings, and you might, you fight with your siblings, but you love them and you don't want to lose that connection. So I wanted to be within a day's drive of my parents' house. The campus setting was a little bit less important to me, but I knew I wanted to go somewhere that wasn't just a college town. That wasn't the experience that I wanted. I needed to be somewhere that still had access to some bigger city amenities and things to do. And I knew that I didn't want to go to a huge school either. I wanted a personalized experience, one where the professors knew my name, knew who I was, and didn't just see me as one of the hundreds of students passing through their classroom on a daily basis. So the main schools I considered were St. Louis University, Mississippi State, and Georgia Tech. I also applied to Texas A&M, which has a meteorology program, and then LSU as a backup just in case. There's no meteorology program there, but gotta have that backup plan B, right? So the internet was really becoming a thing as I was in high school. So I'm old enough to remember a time before the internet. So the internet was really becoming a thing, but most of the websites were a lot more basic than they are today. And so that made it harder to find information about what schools had the meteorology degrees. So if I had known about the University of South Alabama in Mobile at the time, I likely would have considered going there as well. So it's important to look at all the options now that that information is so readily available. And of the schools that I visited, the three, Mississippi State was just too much. It was too big for me. It was too much of a college town setting. So that was out. Georgia Tech seemed appealing even after my visit, but financial aid prospects there were pretty slim and we couldn't afford the full tuition there. And then St. Louis University came along and they actually recruited me. They invited me to the school for a few days to shadow a student and interview for a full ride scholarship. So the campus was gorgeous, the department was friendly, and I could really see myself going there. And as it turns out, I didn't get that full ride scholarship, but I did receive a partial scholarship, which made it affordable to me and my family, with only a little bit of student loans. Couldn't pay for the whole thing, but only a little bit of student loans. So in August of 2001, I headed off to start a new adventure in St. Louis. And my experience there was so great. I cannot overstate how much I enjoyed my experience there and how much that experience means to me. Meteorology is a very rigorous degree. There are so many courses that you have to take for a meteorology degree that a lot of people struggle to finish the degree in 4 years. It's a lot of science and a lot of math, and some of those courses are very demanding and very difficult. Thankfully, I came in with some AP credits and was able to test out of a few other classes through the CLEP program. And even then, I was still taking full course loads every semester. So 16 to 18 hours a semester. And that's not for everybody. So, know that in some cases, depending on what degree you take, it might take more than 4 years, and that's okay. You just have to plan for it ahead of time. So know what you're getting into. And then the other thing is, I wanted that small department feel, right? And when I said the department was small, I'm not kidding. That bottom picture there is my entire graduating class for the Department of Meteorology at St. Louis. There were 7 of us. So actually it's minus one person, the person taking the picture. But we were very close, frequently had study parties, and we just had so much fun along the way. That college experience and how you choose that college is going to shape your education. So just make sure that when you're doing your research on where you want to go visit those campuses, talk to the departments, find out what you can expect from that experience. For me, that small department really is what made my college experience so special. So my junior year, the department invited some folks from the National Weather Service out to talk to our class. And while they were there, they talked about the volunteer program. Well, I just jumped at that opportunity. I wanted to learn as much as I could about this agency because that was really the only thing that I knew that you could do with meteorology that was not TV, right? So I jumped at that opportunity. And so my junior year, I I spent about 6 hours a week during the spring semester at the National Weather Service office in St. Louis, learning some of their basic operational duties and helping out with their outreach efforts. And that experience, that volunteer experience, really helped me decide that I could be happy working for the National Weather Service, that I really connected with the work and with the job and with the mission that the National Weather Service has. And so, that really kind of solidified things. And as I was wrapping up that volunteer time at the end of junior year, an opportunity came up for a paid student position. Well, I was already doing it for free. Of course, I want to be paid for it, right? So I applied for that, and I got selected, and I was so ecstatic, and I wanted to start right away, just like jump right into it. But unfortunately, I was headed home for the summer, right? So St. Louis, New Orleans, that's a little too far to commute on a daily basis. So I just asked the question, hey, can I work at the office that's in Southeast Louisiana for the summer and then come back here for the school year and work here during the school year? And I'll be honest, I didn't think it was going to work out. It's two different regions, it's two different budgets, but they said yes. So I went back home and I worked full time during the summer at the office here in Slidell, which covers the New Orleans area. And during that time, I shadowed one of their full time employees the whole summer, worked the rotating shifts with him, learned the operational duties, got certified to do the upper air balloon launches. And so I spent that whole summer working for the National Weather Service. And that very rudimentary poster on the right, that's what I presented at the end of the summer. It was the early 2000s. I was working with the tools I had. I know it looks like a sixth grade research project, but it's just kind of a summary. So I helped release the upper air balloons and got certified. Learned to issue products such as flood statements. Came together with other student volunteers to talk about our experiences and kind of make recommendations for revamping the volunteer program, and then learning how to do the weather radio and stuff like that. So it was really a great experience to do that. Now, as part of that paid student job, I had a guaranteed job with the National Weather Service when I graduated. But then I faced another tough decision, because do I start work or do I go to grad school? I kind of wanted to go to grad school, but it's tough to turn down that guaranteed job, right? So here we are. I've got this opportunity on one hand with the guaranteed job. I have my pick of any open entry-level position in the entire National Weather Service. I can start working towards my career goals right out of college. I don't have to worry about that job search, right? But on the other hand, tropical meteorology is what got me into it. Hurricanes are what got me into it. And I didn't have the opportunity to take any courses that dealt with tropical meteorology in St. Louis. If you look at a map, it's a little landlocked up there, right? So, I kind of wanted to do that. So I made a deal with myself and I said, okay, if I can get a full ride to graduate school, no cost at all to me, I'll go to graduate school. I'll put off the job, I'll go to grad school. And thankfully, Florida State came knocking. They recruited me. They said, "Hey, we really are interested in you coming here. We're gonna fly you down to Tallahassee on our dime. We're gonna try to convince you to come here. We're gonna pay for you to come here. We want you to come here free of charge, no charge at all." So in the end, I did. I went to Florida State. And before I got there, I applied for a fellowship through the American Meteorological Society, and I was awarded that. And that particular fellowship made it so that I could even choose which professor I got to work with, because I had my own money. I didn't need that. He didn't have to have money for me. I was bringing it with me. So that, fellowships are so important. Apply for them. I mean, find out what professional organizations are part of your career path. Join them and find out what kind of opportunities they have for funding. So that fellowship opened up a lot of doors, which we'll talk about on the next slide too. But obviously, I wanted to focus on tropical meteorology in grad school. And so that's what I did. And I finished my master's degree at Florida State. So back to that fellowship opening doors. So we already know I turned down the guaranteed job at the start, right? Decided to go to grad school. Well, part of this fellowship was attending the annual American Meteorological Society meeting and going to the fellowship luncheon. I happened to sit with the Weather Service Regional Director for Southern Region at that luncheon. And we started talking, and I talked about my experience in St. Louis and how I had worked for the Weather Service already and how I really wanted to work with the Weather Service after graduation, but how I had turned down the job because I wanted to try to focus on tropical meteorology. And he basically says, well, why don't we just hire you as a student worker again? So having that opportunity, that networking, talking to these people opened up that other door. So then I got the student offer that, oh, guess what? Comes with the next guaranteed job when I graduate from grad school. So once I finished that, I went straight into the Weather Service, and lucky me, there happened to be an opening right here at my quote unquote home office in Southeast Louisiana. So what do we do now that I've started this big girl job? What does the National Weather Service do? The National Weather Service mission is protection of lives and property from weather and climate related hazards. So that is the crux of everything we do. Every forecast we issue, every warning we issue comes down to making sure that you've got the information you need to make the decisions that you have to make in order to stay safe. So that's what we do. It's a mission that is so deeply personal to all of us that work in this agency. We all feel very strongly about this, and that's why we're so passionate in our jobs. We issue the weather watches and warnings, and then we also do partner support. So we're constantly talking to emergency managers, local officials, everybody that's making those decisions about how to keep people safe on a daily basis. Now, I'm not going to say it's not all roses. There are definitely challenges. One of them is that I am in the minority as a woman. There are far more men in this agency than there are women. In fact, when I started at this office, I was the only female in the operational unit. When I got the job as the lead forecaster, when I got that promotion, I was the first female lead forecaster ever at this office. So, I definitely feel it, that being in the minority, but thankfully all of my coworkers here at this office are great. And we've really improved our numbers, especially at this office particular. In fact, now there are five women in the operational unit. I'm no longer just one. I have four cohorts here now. Another challenge is rotating shift work. Most meteorology jobs, especially if they're operational, or even the broadcasters, have rotating shifts or weird schedules. If you're on the morning show for the news, you have to be at the station for like 4 a.m. So, just keep that kind of thing in mind. Know what you're getting into when you're looking at these jobs. And that's where that job shadowing comes into play, right? Like I had already job shadowed. I knew about the rotating shifts and I had already worked it. So I knew that. It can be very high stress, especially during those hazardous weather periods. I'm not even going to lie. I've broken down in tears before. During Ida, it was so hard to have to come to work, show up, get the messaging out when you're also trying to prepare your own house and trying to make sure that your family is out of danger and trying to make sure that your friends are out of the danger areas. So it can be extremely high stress, extremely taxing. And then there's also moving goalposts, right? Meteorology is not settled. We don't know everything there is to know about the atmosphere. If we did, we'd be issuing perfect forecasts every day. So the goalposts are moving on an almost daily basis at this point. Science is just advancing so quickly. So the science and the best practices are constantly changing. And that's a challenge that we deal with. And so that kind of ties into continuing development, right? So now that you've got the job, don't just sit there. Don't just rest on your laurels. Get involved. So, for me, finding a niche was really important. So I started out as the volunteer coordinator. So in that top picture, that's me with our 6 or 7 student volunteers during the summer of, I believe, 2008. Um, since then, I've become one of the subject matter experts in the tropical weather program within the National Weather Service. So I've served on a lot of development teams. I've developed training to help other meteorologists in the Weather Service become better at communicating the weather. Um, and one of the things that it took me a little while to realize is when I came in, I just wanted to be involved in everything. I wanted to know everything there was to know about the severe weather program, about the tropical program, about the winter program, about all of it. It's okay to start broad, but at some point you just kind of have to narrow that focus, right? You can't be a jack of all trades and be a subject matter expert in everything, because you can't be an expert in everything. Something is going to suffer. So I've really taken that focus on the tropical side. Networking, find a mentor, ask that mentor for connections to other people, and then reach out on your own. That's fine too. Send an email, make a phone call, find those connections, because nobody, as much as you don't want to acknowledge it, who matters. Exposure matters. So, networking is super important as you go through your personal career development and things like that. And then continuing education. Things have changed so much in the last 20 years since I started down this path. So I'm always looking for opportunities to improve, whether that's through training that is offered by the National Weather Service or outside of the National Weather Service. I'm constantly looking for new opportunities to improve either my communication, my leadership skills, my scientific knowledge, all of that. It all kind of plays into each other. And so I'm just going to kind of wrap up with some lessons that I learned along the way. And I think I hope most of these came out as I was going through my own career path. But the first is do your research. So know what you're getting into before you get into it. Find out, don't wait until you're, 4 years into your career to decide, oh man, if I had known about those rotating shifts, I probably wouldn't have done this. It's a big thing. Networking opens doors. So sometimes it's just who you happen to have lunch with can make a difference. Apply for assistance when you are, in college and you want to attend some of those professional conferences. A lot of them offer either reduced registration fees, or even complete financial assistance for students to attend, especially if you're willing to also help out with the conference and volunteer during certain sessions. So look for those assistance opportunities. Find your niche, like I said, and just never stop learning. Stay engaged in that STEM field. Keep your mind open and just really embrace the fact that science is not settled and there's always more to learn. And so thank you so much for inviting me. And if anyone has questions after watching this, feel free to reach out. That's my email. And you can also visit our website or call us. Little known secret, the National Weather Service answers phones. People answer the phones 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So even if you're not in my forecast area, you can go to just the regular weather.gov website, find your local forecast office, call them. But yeah, we answer the phones. So feel free to call us if you have questions or if you want to learn more about the National Weather Service. And I'm going to stop sharing. So, all
Thank you
right.
so
So
much,
that's me. That's how I got here.
Thank you so much. That was incredible. And I really loved hearing about your whole experience growing up and kind of how that led to where you are now. So I just have a couple questions, and I'll start with one like kind of about your career itself. So I don't really know many people in meteorology, like here locally. But what would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions that people could have about your career? like when it comes to like weather predictions and forecasting, just as a whole?
So I would say the biggest misconception is that we're wrong more than we're right. Right? You've all heard that joke, right? I get paid regardless of whether or not I'm right. We're actually right way more than we're wrong. It just depends on how you define that measuring stick, right? So if there's a 20% chance of rain and it rains on you, were we wrong? Or did you just happen to be underneath that 20% chance? So, or if there's an 80% chance of rain and it doesn't rain on you, again, did you just happen to be in one of those holes? So, that's one of the big challenges, is getting people to understand that, the temperature and the rain and all of that stuff is just, it's so dependent on so many things, but we almost always get the big picture right. Sometimes the little details about exactly where it's going to rain and exactly what time, maybe we'll be wrong there, but as a whole, we actually get it right way more than we get it wrong.
Yeah, I know. I've heard about like the 20%, 80% chance of rain thing when people are like, oh, it's a 20% chance, but it's actually just like 20% of the area is going to be rained on. And so I think that's kind of interesting. Um, yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of go broader now. As being a woman in STEM, and as the goal of our webinar is to kind of inspire young women to go into STEM. So what advice would you give to young girls who are interested in meteorology or other STEM fields? And I like to ask this question to everyone just because I think it's so universal. So I'd love to see your opinion.
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is just never stop asking questions, right? So take that curiosity that got you into science and just keep learning more. And don't let anybody tell you that you can't. I didn't talk about it, but there was a professor that I had in college, not in the meteorology program, but I had a professor in college that treated me like I didn't know what I was doing, and that he didn't believe that I could do what I did, or what I wanted to do. And, I showed him I got an A in his class. So, when you face that negativity, don't let it get to you. Make sure you've surrounded yourself with enough people who do believe in you and who do support you, that you can overcome that negativity. Because as much as I would love to say that it's not going to be there, you're going to face negativity at some point. And so you just need to make sure that you've got that support system in place so that the negativity doesn't get to you.
Yes, and then one last question for me. Looking back on your journey as a whole, you took us through your childhood and then kind of college. Is there anything that you wish you had done differently, or anything you wish that you would have known earlier in your career, or that you think might be helpful to know for other girls?
Yeah. So for my particular case, I think it was my biggest challenge was choosing the school, right? Because I didn't know what schools had meteorology at the time. Um, I only knew of a few. Um, and so those are the ones that I kind of visited and stuff like that. Like I said, internet it was there, but it wasn't super easy to use. Now, do that research, I'm not saying that I would have changed anything, because like I said, that the department at St. Louis University was just, I don't think I could have asked for anything better. But I probably would have visited the University of South Alabama in Mobile, just especially because it was only a few hours from home instead of a full day away from home. So that's probably the biggest thing that I would have liked to have known in the moment. But again, I'm not sure that I would change anything just because of how great my experience was in St. Louis. Otherwise, I think, especially in the National Weather Service, you reach a point where it's harder to progress if you aren't willing to move, just because there are a limited number of, say, management positions in any given office. So unless you're willing to move to another office, you could sit in the same job for a long time, because you've got to wait for a position to open for you to apply for it. So that's possibly the only thing I would have done differently, is I might have considered moving around a little bit more to progress my career a little bit faster. I'm not saying I'm not happy where I am, but the rotating shifts are getting pretty old. so, so that's probably the only other thing, is just, again, knowing what that career path can look like and what the opportunities are down the road.
Yes, thank you so much. That's all I had on my end. But if Miss Kathy has any other questions or wants to wrap up for us, that would be great.
I'll do that. And so actually, Danielle, you covered one of the things I wanted to know about the detractors, because I think everyone needs to know that it's not going to be smooth sailing the whole way. So thank you for covering that, for being honest and open about that. I want to go back to when you talked about Ida, and you talked about how stressful that was. And I can only imagine that was not the only time that you had a lot of stress in your life because of the circumstances. How do you tend to yourself? How do you balance that? What do you do for your mental health, your physical health? Because, women tend to have an extra load with that, because you're tending to a home and other people, and then you've got your job. How do you maintain that balance?
It's not easy. I will tell you that for certain. It is not easy. I think the most important part is recognizing when you've reached your limit. So even now, I still have a little bit of an emotional response to talking about Ida. Just because it was so hard. That morning, the morning of landfall, I was on shift, and we get phone calls from reporters and stuff like that all the time. And so we got a request for a live radio interview, and we're wrapping up the interview, and he says, "Is there anything that you have to add?" And so I started talking about, if you are still on the coast, if you're still in Grand Isle, if you're still in Port Fourchon, you need to find the safest place in your house right now. You need to find a closet. You need to go there. You need to protect your head, and you just need to be ready for really bad. And I broke up in that interview, and I'm still doing it now. And so that was the moment when I knew I wasn't okay. And so I had to step away, and I had to leave the operational area, and I talked to the people I was working with. I was like, "Y'all, I need a break. I can't do this. I need a break." And so stepping away and knowing when you've reached your limit is the most important thing you can do. Whew. Sorry, y'all. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think that is fantastic, because, Danielle, we want young girls to look at the reality of their choices. And your choice has been amazing with the journey you've taken and the career that you've had. But at the same time, there is a human element to everything that we do. And we have to be aware of that, because we don't live in a sterile silo. There is that. If we don't have that emotional reaction to things, then there's something wrong with us. And so I'm so grateful for your transparency with that. And I think it's powerful. I think it goes back to something you said earlier. You need to know who you are. You need to know who you are. You need to understand where your passion is. And then you need to respond to that appropriately. And that's what you've done.
Yeah. And I will say that we were so lucky here, that our agency really supports us. So in the wake of Ida, we shut down the office. We worked for another day or two after landfall, but then we shut down the office for, I think, 3 or 4 days. And everybody, basically, it was go home, take care of what you need to take care of, get your stuff in order, get your house in order, handle whatever it is you need to handle personally, and then we'll come back and we'll get back to work. But I'm so thankful that they gave us that time off, because it lets you regroup a little bit. I'm not saying that 4 days was enough to get over it. Obviously, like I still have emotional reactions to it. And I will for years. But I can talk about it without completely just losing it. Like there in the immediate aftermath, I was a mess. I'm not even gonna lie, I was a mess. And it wasn't just because of the work, it was because of, you know, the stress of like knowing, like, you as a meteorologist, I can see the disaster happening in slow motion. I'm watching it happen in slow motion, and I know that I've done everything I can to get the message out there, but there's still people that are going to be extremely affected by this event. And so I don't know that everybody really understands the emotional response to that. And it can be very difficult. But again, knowing your own limits, recognizing when you've reached that point that you can't do it by yourself anymore. It's okay. It's okay. Like if you need to talk to somebody, talk to somebody. If you need to step away and take time away, then do it. Because if you can't take care of yourself, then you're not going to be effective in your job either.
Okay, so I'm gonna lighten it up just a little bit here. That was
Sorry.
fantastic. I mean, I had so many things in my life that I was associating with that, not necessarily that, but yeah. But so there's always this joke. My husband is a Weather Channel junkie, and so we watch a lot of Weather Channel in our house, and we get real tickled when we see these signs. Jim Cantori, don't come here. Go home, Jim Cantori. You know, because that to them means things are bad. Have you ever had
Mhm.
anyone have that kind of reaction like you? Like, okay, Danielle, I want to hear from you because that means things are bad.
Yes. So, you know, like I've got all of my friends and all of my family and you know, social media, right? Facebook, social media, all that stuff. And so people that I haven't really talked to since high school, but they're still my Facebook friends because this is what we do, right? We collect friends on Facebook. And so, you know, all the people that I graduated high school with, they make these jokes. They're like, we know it's not serious until you start posting. So, so yes, that absolutely happens. And you know, I also get the questions like, "Hey, I've got vacation planned next week. What's the weather going to be?" So, so yeah, that is a thing. But
Yeah,
yeah,
they
I
think you
do
got a
joke that
crystal
if you ever
ball.
I do joke that if you ever see me on the news, something went horribly wrong because
It is.
they only pull us out for serious threats or in the aftermath of an event.
Very cool. And I know you said you didn't want to be on TV, but have you ever met any of those people from the Weather Channel?
I don't. I'm trying to think. I've met Jim Cantori at a conference,
Yeah.
and I've met a couple other folks at the conferences. We have really good relationships with the broadcast meteorologists that are in our local markets. So, you know, anybody watching in Southeast Louisiana, you know, like I know Chris Franklin and Margaret Orr and all the folks that are on TV down here. And in the Baton Rouge area, you know, Steve Caparata, and Josh Eachus. I know all of them too. So it's a pretty tight knit community. And so we do all know each other and we really do help support each other and things like that too. So it can be stressful, but again, if you've got that support group there, if that support network, then it makes it so that you can handle it.
Wow. So what a great journey. Actually, has this not been fabulous?
Yes, it has. Thank you so much for coming on here and speaking to us. It was really wonderful.
I'll never look at the weather the same way again. And
I
so
know.
I'm very excited about this. I think folks are going to be fascinated by your journey and your story. And I think it will be inspirational for not just young people. You know, there are a lot of folks that get to adulthood and think, I missed the boat of my passion. And so I think this is going to open doors for people. Danielle, thank you so much for joining us. Ashley, thank you as always for your leadership with this. I can't believe it's episode 3. We'll be gearing up for episode 4 before we know it. And we're just grateful to the National Girls Collaborative Project for allowing us the opportunity to post this with their other webinars. And it's their birthday, by the way. So happy 22nd birthday to the National Girls Collaborative Project. And we are just looking forward to continuing this. And so as we sign off, thanks to everyone who watched. And again, thanks to our special guest, Danielle Manning and Ashni Shah, who is our fearless leader. This is Kathy Cox Bonial, and we look forward to seeing you next time.